A very warm welcome to you all. My name is Namita Datta, and I'm Program Manager for Solutions for Youth Employment. It's a global program that is hosted in the World Bank in the Social Protection and Jobs Global Practice. Just very quickly, an introduction to some of you who may not know what S4Y is, although I think a lot of you join us every month. But for those of you who may be joining for the first time, it's a global program, it's a global partnership. And when we say S4Y, we really mean 4 different components of our network. The first component is 44 NGOs that are doing pretty cutting edge, innovative work in their respective countries and their programs, running youth employment programs. They are not World Bank programs, but they are led by our partners, and they were selected because they are all experimenting or trying something new. And this is an agenda which we all know requires innovative and new thinking. So that's one component of our network. We call it our impact portfolio, and several of our partners from the impact portfolio have joined us today. The second part of our network is what we call our private sector advisory council. This is about 35 to 40 private companies, a lot of them large technology companies. Facebook is one of them, and we are really delighted that they are sharing their insights today with us in this session. So that's the second component. The third is what we call our youth advisory group. So these are 17 young people, and we make sure we are constantly in dialogue with them to make sure we have youth voice in almost everything we do, whether it's a knowledge product or it's anything else. Even in our board meetings, they're part of our discussions. And the last is an internal network of World Bank group teams, mainly the task team leaders, who are designing and running and implementing youth employment programs, and they are spread all over in the World Bank. They could be in social protection and jobs, but some of them are in the agriculture global practice, in the urban development team, in the private sector development teams. So it's a fairly cross-cutting agenda, and we internally try and help coordinate to make sure we are talking to each other, sharing some of our learnings as we go along. It's about 150 operations of the World Bank collectively invested and investing about $17 billion in youth employment across the globe. One important part of our network is, as I mentioned, the Private Sector Advisory Council, and this is leading companies. And this particular series, what we do every month is we invite one of our private sector partners to share with us something new that they are designing, they are launching, they are implementing, something that may be fairly early in the game. And so the idea of this series is for us to talk to each other, to share with each other what we are doing, and hopefully to also inspire more collaboration. Because I mean, one thing COVID is showing us is the need for us to put our heads together in doing much more than we have done normally. So that's a quick introduction about S4Y, and I'm so delighted. The session today is on a topic that is really close to our heart. It's a topic about digital capabilities. COVID has really shown us that whether you are an individual or you are an enterprise or you are a country, if you are not digitally capable, you are not going to be resilient in dealing with this pandemic. But the thing to be that is really important to keep in mind is that as we use more and more digital technology to either access schools, to get education, to get jobs, there is a real risk of leaving those people who are actually disconnected digitally, really leaving them behind from education, from jobs, from even payments, access to payments. So how do we make sure that as we respond to COVID, we are really addressing the digital divide, and we are not leaving behind several segments of the population, particularly youth? I'm really delighted today that we have colleagues from Facebook and Coursera who will share with us a new program that they're about to launch, and some of what they're learning as they're trying to launch this in a very difficult time indeed. I'm really delighted Nicole is here with us. Nicole Goldstein she leads strategy and partnerships for Facebook. and Daryl Pincus, who works with Coursera. He leads the industry partnerships that Coursera has. And I believe apart from Facebook, Coursera also has other partnerships with Google, with IBM, and with Salesforce. But what we are here to talk about today is a particular way they've come together on this agenda on skills, and particularly youth who are less privileged. So with this, I hand it over to you, Nicole and Daryl. A warm welcome to you both, and the floor is yours. I request everyone to please keep themselves microphones muted. And as ideas come up, and as you have questions, as you listen to our speakers, please feel free to use the chat box, and I'll try and keep tabs on it, and we'll have some time for discussion in the end. Nicole, over to you.
Thank you.
Nicole, hi, Daryl.
Hi, Namita. Thank you so much, Namita, for that kind introduction. And thank you, everyone, for making the time to be here today. So what we were going to talk to you about is how Facebook, a technology company and social media marketing business, has joined, why we partnered with Coursera, which is essentially an educational online company to support skills pathways into decent jobs for all job seekers. So that's what we want to share with you today. So I thought what would be helpful is just give you a little bit of context around Facebook and really around the company. I'm sure many of you on this call probably use one of Facebook's apps or services in your daily life, for your social lives potentially, or maybe for a side hustle that you have. But here on the left-hand side, you see our core apps, such as Facebook and Instagram. And then moving into the products, you have the Messenger products, such as Messenger itself and Workplace and WhatsApp. And, WhatsApp, we send about 100 billion WhatsApp messages every day. So you see the scale of where we're reaching. And then in terms of where we hope to go in the future, building the infrastructure around everything in terms of connectivity with free Wi-Fi and partnerships with telcos, and then into artificial intelligence, which we use obviously throughout our tools and services, and then virtual reality and augmented reality. So that's Facebook as a company that's 2.5 billion people use one of Facebook's apps and services every day. So that's the scale. And we have 200 million businesses who use our free advertising products, and then around 8 million advertisers on the platform. And then Coursera. So Coursera has around 64 million learners globally. And here this slide is very clear in just showing you where those learners are situated in the world. And as you can see, a lot of learners in Asia, in Latin America, some in Africa, and as you'd expect, many in North America and Europe. And so really when we came together to form this partnership, two very different companies, servicing different needs, we actually said to each other, Daryl and I, how do we think about disrupting higher education and making access more open to everyone, and ensuring that everyone has access to a decent, well-paying job? And really at the heart of what we've designed is ensuring that it's not just learning for learning's sake, which is obviously wonderful, but at the end of this learning journey, there is a job, and we're connecting the learner to an employer. So that's really how we've thought about what we're trying to achieve together. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you just see how many partners Coursera works with in its support of learners.
So hi, everyone. Daryl Pincus here from Coursera. Before we dive into this specific program, I wanted to give you guys a little context of some things we've seen, some learnings we've had in 2020. As we know, the COVID pandemic has had a dramatic impact on the economy and the labor market, especially as it relates to disadvantaged youth. Even before the pandemic, there's been this growing divide, this trend between highly educated and less educated workers, a divide that threatens to grow due to automation. You can see on this chart, the x-axis is risk of automation and the y-axis is wages. And in that lower right-hand quadrant, those are a lot of lower skilled jobs that are at the highest risk for being displaced by automation. And this divide just accelerated during the pandemic. Less educated workers are seeing much greater unemployment than more highly educated workers. This chart, if you look at that top light blue line, those are workers with a bachelor's degree or higher. The displacement, the unemployment rate has almost got back to pre-pandemic levels, where you can see some of the less educated, less skilled workers being much more disrupted. And there's many studies out there showing that, you know, a portion of these jobs may actually never be coming back. So many times it's those from backgrounds and those in groups that don't have access to the education, which don't have access to the digital jobs, that are really feeling the big displacement. So let me quickly, run you through the story of Coursera's first glimpse of the impact of the pandemic. This came back on January 27th when we received a call from Duke University, one of our content partners. They have a Wuhan joint venture with a campus in Kunshan that was quarantined. So students and teachers were locked down. They asked us, hey, could we potentially offer Coursera for our campus, free to those faculty and students that couldn't do live learning? So we convened with our partner community, and they all agreed that supporting fellow educators in a time of need was really the right thing to do. So we did this, and it was very effective for Duke. But very quickly, the virus spread and closed almost every school in the world. You see 91% of learners around the world were affected. So we saw this global need for online learning. So again, on March 12th, we convened with our partners and we decided to offer all of our courses free to any college or university around the world. So what happened? Very quickly, institutions, campuses around the world adopted using our platform. We went from just 30 schools to over 3,700 using Coursera in the classroom. So as campuses closed, learning continued. What did it do? It moved online. And in addition, not just institutions were moving on to Coursera, but individual learners were flocking to online learning. This is just a quick chart of our month-to-month enrollments over the last year, and you can see they've just exploded. Enrollments are up over 450%, and we've seen over 6 times the amount of new learners. So first-time learners to Coursera just in the past 7 months. So this is a trend we see as, we don't think online learning is necessarily a panacea for replacing live instruction, but we think having virtual and live is something that will continue to grow and be permanent going forward. And really what we're seeing in online learning, we're also seeing in jobs. A lot of jobs, a lot of companies, Coursera included, that were strictly in person on campus have now been switched to virtual. And in speaking with many different CEOs, we see this is a trend that's going to continue. This is a quote I want to share with you from our CEO recently. One of the most exciting things about digital jobs is often they can be learned online and they can be performed online. So when we think about disadvantaged populations around the world, I ask you, how might online learning and remote work help drive greater social equity?
Thanks, Daryl. And so the same was true of Facebook during this pandemic. What we found from our clients, so many businesses, they had to pivot to fully online services. We also saw an increase in what we call direct-to-consumer businesses, so businesses that only exist in the online world. We also saw as well, on the other side of that these businesses were demanding digital marketing skills to help them reach their customers online. And of course, that meant a need for people who have these skills. And these digital marketing roles can be done anywhere as long as you have access to the internet and, of course, you have these skills. I thought this graph would be helpful for you to understand sort of where Facebook sits and in digital advertising, and also the spend of digital advertising. So you can see that in the context of the demand for these skills. So in the US, you can see the sort of steeper line shows the number of the spend in digital advertising, which is 200 billion in 2020 in the US. So you see the scale of the advertising industry. And then, of course, the demand for these skills. So the roles are growing at 10% this year. And also we see the internet spend has gone up 1.5 times, obviously with regard to reaching customers online than ever before during the pandemic. So we're now going to talk you through why we've created this alternative pathway and how we've gone about doing this pathway program. So when Daryl and I came together, bringing Facebook and Coursera into discussions, we really were thinking about how do we make higher education more affordable to everyone? And these data are from the US. So in the US here, we see that particularly on the employer side, so where Facebook sits when we recruit many different types of employees, we often think about the fact that skills become quite outdated fairly quickly. So we're looking at constantly helping our employees renew their skills all the time. And that's what many of our clients also want from their employees. We also know, and I'm sure many of you on this call who have children understand how expensive higher education is and what many people, many families take on in terms of debt to support their kids into university. These are just some data we pulled from EdStats on gross enrollment in tertiary education. And really you see that, as expected, in many developing countries, the enrollment rates are not very high. And, you know, when you think about data points in Africa, those children who start kindergarten, only around 5% will ever make it into higher education. So we know there has to be a more accessible, more equitable way of supporting everyone to have opportunity for a decent higher education. So let's take a quick look at what we've designed together in terms of our curriculum. So we really designed the curriculum to support roles in social media marketing. So we started with the respective job roles and looked at what someone needed to be able to do to be able to perform that role. And we spoke to many of Facebook clients, recruiting managers, and of course, Facebook recruiting managers themselves to understand what they needed in this particular role. So the course is around 100 hours of online learning. And we know that the challenge of online learning is that, you know, many learners will drop out. And as Daryl said, it's not a panacea. So we really thought about how do we keep our learners engaged along this journey? And we've really worked with different types of tools to make sure it's project-based and learners actually get to do practical group exercises and build out a portfolio of advertising campaigns. So Coursera partners with Rhyme, which is a tool that helps learners do these hands-on activities in groups. We've also made sure that the curriculum has both the technical skills and the soft skills overlaid with this. And we also support the learner throughout the journey to hone their interview skills and really be ready for that job role. And Coursera again has a partnership with Big Interview, which is an AI-powered platform to enable learners to get real-time feedback on their interviewing skills when they apply for a job. So when learners go through the curriculum, at the end of it, they get a Facebook certification and a Coursera certification. And we believe they are two strong signals in the marketplace of employers. And then finally, once graduates complete, they get to actually supply their resume to employer partners. And these employer partners are Facebook recruiting teams, but also Facebook's huge client network who are part of this employer consortium. And these are just some of the brands that have signed up to be employer partners and source talent from this program.
So on this slide, I just really wanted to talk about how we're transforming communities by connecting learners, educators, and employers. But our key goal in all of this is creating access to both learning and to jobs. So this includes things like scholarships and financial aid for those that cannot pay. This includes what I was alluding to earlier, these blended learning experiences for those that need wraparound support. So we're partnering with different nonprofits, governments, and colleges around the world to where they use this program in the classroom, or there's coaches or instructors that help facilitate the learning and help learners go through it. This content is fully downloadable and it's accessible on mobile. So no matter what your device is, learners can find a Wi-Fi hotspot or be at Wi-Fi at home, download the content, and then go to work. And on their way to work on the bus can actually be taking this content. And then we're working on potential partnerships with telcos to increase access even more. So where a learner could actually download this content without having to go against their data for the month. Next, we have subtitles and localization. We have many of these programs that are translated into lots of different languages. This program just launched in September, but over the next few months, this will be available in many different languages to share across the world. And then finally, and I think one of the most important pieces of this is in partnership with Facebook, we're recruiting employers that are looking for new non-traditional talent pipelines. So those 30 plus companies that have already committed to hiring out of this program, they realize that this is a skills training and non-traditional credentialing program where these learners may come from different backgrounds, but have skill demonstration and are therefore prepared to work in these roles.
So here we have, we launched this program about a month ago, and these are the enrollment data we are seeing at the moment. So we had, as you can see, 230,000 visitors to the site, and 60,000 learners have enrolled in the first month. And then we thought we'd give you a glimpse of where our learners are coming from. And obviously India and the US are our top countries. And then seeing actually some strong interest from Latin American learners in Mexico and Nigeria. But obviously these data change all the time based on obviously us marketing the program to learners, and obviously as learners exchange themselves around what pathway program is optimal for their needs. And this is exactly what I mean as peers exchange all the time online. So these are some influencers on Instagram who are doing the program, and they have a huge number of followers globally. And so they talk about the Coursera Facebook partnership with their followers. And this is how we're seeing the spread and the interest in the program by young people. And it's a real change in how higher education is delivered and perceived. So, no longer are, say, university rankings the way in which young people think about, what courses to do. It's actually from their peers themselves.
So really, as we look at this program, we are completely focused on outcomes. with multiple mechanisms to track and refine the program. We're with this program and with the other programs on our platform that are job focused, we are collecting data. We're creating impact studies that we're then sharing with the world based on these post-completion surveys, looking at 6 months post-completion, job outcomes, wage gains, the like. We also imagine the thousands and thousands of learners going through this content all at the same time, that we're able to do real-time progression tracking. And if there's a point in the curriculum where certain types of learners are struggling, our machine learning algorithms both create interventions to help, as well as create signals for our team to go in and potentially add more scaffolding, rearrange the curriculum to really help drive engagement. And what's cool about that is it's not just overall engagement, but we could slice learners down into different segment types, different backgrounds, and seeing how the course affects a certain persona versus others, and really customize the curriculum and the interventions to help that specific type of learner. We also do a lot with learner feedback, and probably one of the most important parts I want to highlight is employer feedback. These programs are built with hiring managers, where we do a job task analysis to really understand the role. And then those skills to the job are broken down into learning objectives and built back up into a curriculum. But even after we built the course, and as we have learners going through it, and we're pairing those learners, we're connecting them with the employers, we're in constant conversation with these employers to make sure that we are addressing the different skills, the different gaps that learners may be coming to them with, and adding it to the program. And I know someone put in the chat that it's not just technical skills, but it's a lot of these soft skills. I completely agree. And this is the type of feedback we also look to get from our employers, and then find ways to either incorporate this into the program, turn on other programs such as the partnership with Big Interview, where learners can do some of that soft skill practice, or even partnering with brick and mortar institutions, such as a nonprofit in a community, to provide that in-person real-time coaching.
So where we're going next with our partnership is Coursera and Facebook want to explore other pathways. So not just social media marketing, but potentially machine learning, web developer pathways, augmented reality pathways as well. And I think really when we come to the table and strategize which pathway to go next with, we will look at obviously what employers are demanding where there's most job growth. So that will be the key determinant for us. Second of all, as Daryl said, we're always trying to optimize the learning experience, and we can do that with all the tools that Coursera has and its machine learning apparatus. And then, of course, with Facebook's client ecosystem, we can hear feedback from our clients who've signed up as part of the employer consortium to understand how these new recruits are on the job and whether the curriculum's actually working. Third of all, when we think about implementation, we know that online learning can be challenging for many learners. And so how do we form partnerships with governments and nonprofits to provide that more blended learning opportunity? And that's really where I'll leave it, and maybe a call to action to many of you on this call who are task team leaders from the World Bank or from the nonprofit sector, who may be able to support the implementation of this program and partner with us. Thank you very much. So I think we do have quite a bit of time for questions now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you, Daryl. This was fantastic. And thanks for also leaving enough time for discussion. You can see the chat boxes buzzing with activity. I'll try and read out two at a time and then give you a chance to respond. And I have a couple of questions also of my own, but I want to get to what's in the chat box already. So I think you already addressed the first question, which is about soft skills, non-technical skills like patience and empathy, which a lot of businesses say is really where they feel that there is a gap. So what is your experience? Are you being able to, and I know, Daryl, you addressed that question, but what is your experience? Do you think that it is possible and effective to teach that in an online way? And how are you working around that? And then the second question is about the recruitment process of training providers. It's from Josefina, my colleague, who wants to know about the recruitment process of training providers and whether you have any quality controls to choose them. So I'll stop there, let you answer these two, and then we can go. There are a few more.
So Nicole, let me field the first one, and then I'll let you field the second one. So when we talk about any skills, technical or soft skills, there's learning the skills, which you could do, listening to someone, having someone coach you, listening to a lecture. But then there's actually mastering the skills, which requires actually doing it, and then getting assessed on what you're doing, and then taking some sort of graded module and doing it. With technical skills, we have Coursera labs and all of our different assessments where it's very simple for someone to go in, do something, and then we're able in real time to be able to give them feedback. Like, yes, you did this right, or you didn't do it right. When we get into the world of soft skills, both the idea of doing a hands-on project and then assessing that in real time just becomes more complex. How do you give someone feedback based on their tone, based on their eye contact? So one thing we've found, we have tools where learners can actually practice some of these skills, and they could practice, for example, like by recording themselves, and let's say a mock interview where they're actually recording their responses or giving a presentation. And then the peers in their cohort, so the peers in their class, there's actually rubrics so they can give feedback to each other. And then these learners can also go through the rubric and watch what they've done and give feedback on themselves. Again, this is probably one of the more complex places and one of the most interesting places for innovation to think through, because I think technical skills in an online environment we've really mastered. In some ways, it's probably better than an in-person because you're getting real-time feedback in doing it. With soft skills, I really asked this group in the room, like, there's a lot of cool things we're trying. I know on the Facebook side with AR, VR, and a lot of our partner companies, there's this huge interest and need for this. And I think we're exploring it and we're trying new things, but I would say it's not quite at the level of what technical assessments and hands-on projects look like.
I would add, Daryl, to that. So much of being a social media marketing manager relies on the soft skills. And that's tested through the project. So when you're a social media manager, you're obviously trying to build social media campaigns to a wide audience. And by that nature, you do need quite a lot of creativity to come up with a strong campaign. You need strong communication skills to understand what your top line message is, to be able to resonate with your audience really quickly within 3 seconds, because we all know online attention spans are no longer than 1 second even. So I think just by the nature of the job, you need empathy, creativity, strong communication. And I think the project work does test out those skills and helps a learner hone those skills. And so should we move on to the second question, Namita? Yes, which was really around quality. If I understood the question right, it was quality control and how do we ensure that the employers get a high quality talent pool? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. So I think obviously but a very motivated learner chooses to enroll in this program because it is 100 hours of learning content, and doing that on your own, in your free time, requires that self-motivation. And we also know that many of our learners also have a job at the same time. So they're trying to balance all this all out. So that's one thing we know about our learners. Second of all, when we design the curriculum, we know that we've built it for the specific job role. So hopefully what we're teaching enables a learner to come out of it at the end knowing the requirements for those job roles. So I think that really helps quality control. And then third of all, we really, we haven't had a cohort that's gone through the program, but when we do really want to understand how our employer partners find the talent coming out. So that will be obviously done through surveys. And, as a Facebook employee who's working with clients all the time, I hear from my clients as to what are the challenges with recruiting talent, with onboarding talent, with retention. And so I think, we can feed those things back to Coursera very easily and just make sure the learners are getting the support they need to be successful when they start in a role.
Yeah. The next two questions, Nicole and Daryl, are really about this whole problem of inclusion. So there's a question from Nicolette asking, do you have information about the profile of the students who benefit from this program, and how do you involve students with limited internet connection in more remote areas? And then a related question on how accessible is the program for meeting the needs of people with diverse learning needs? For example, do you have sign language versions of the content? And let me tag on to something I was thinking about when I was listening to you. I mean, a lot of my, at least colleagues from the World Bank group who are on this call, and also from our impact portfolio partners, work in really poor countries with really poorer sections among the youth, and some of them not in urban areas. So what is your strategy in terms of dealing with youth who are still not digital citizens, if you know what I mean? I mean, they have very little digital literacy. So do you have a specific marketing strategy to do an outreach to people like them who are not digital citizens yet? And so what is that next level of inclusion that you want to reach with your campaign? I mean, you're already beginning to do quite a bit, but how do you reach those sections of society?
Shall I
Nicole,
start?
if you want,
I'll
yeah,
start with
go ahead.
the last question. So this notion of digital citizens. So, I've spent my career sort of working in some of the least connected places. Sierra Leone has probably the lowest internet penetration. But what I found was actually so many people were using WhatsApp. I mean, everyone used WhatsApp. And the great thing about the Facebook Coursera partnership is that many people are using Facebook products and services in their daily life in the most hardest to reach areas because they're so simple. And that's why we've got 2.5 billion people using them. And so I think it's not so scary for them to think about doing, they might not term it social media marketing, but we've sort of tackled the first hurdle, which is that the tools are not so distant from their daily lives, which is really interesting. But of course, you're absolutely right. The internet connectivity is a huge challenge. And then second of all, we do know that, many learners will have low literacy and numeracy rates to begin with. And unfortunately, we are coming in at a point where it's probably a bit too late. Our program can't really teach those things. And so there is probably we're coming in at tertiary education level. So what we can do, obviously, is just assess how different learners from Nigeria, potentially, and Egypt, some of the developing country learners that we're seeing coming through the program, and just see what the potential challenges are for those learners. But of course, we can't, I keep saying this, we can't be everything to everyone. We are focusing very specifically on social media marketing roles and hopefully connecting learners to jobs at the end of it. But I think through our blended learning partnerships, where we connect with nonprofits and obviously potentially, the World Bank, we could take on a wider and a deeper understanding of how to support these learners.
And then, Nicole, the question about access to people who have some form of disability. For example, do you have sign language versions of the content? That was one of you.
Daryl, do you want to talk to that question?
Yeah. So all of the content has transcripts. So as you watch a video, you could read along. There are subtitles, which are in multiple different languages. So for those that are hearing impaired, they're able to read the content as they go through it.
Okay. The next question is really a comment from Peter. And he's saying that in their experience, you can actually teach non-technical soft skills, but you have to do a lot of user testing and engaging content with young people. And then there's the next question about which says, apart from the US and other advanced countries, do you have employers that partner with the program in middle and low developing countries? And then another question, again, I think it's about the inclusion agenda. A youth who don't have secondary education, how would you reach them? And I was thinking the same when I looked at the list of countries that you were sharing. A lot of them are in the developed world, and even those in the developing world, like let's say India and Mexico, are countries where I mean they're more developed than others. So I don't know if there is again a strategy of going to sort of even the lower developed countries. So do you want to address that? Those two questions?
So
Yeah.
I'll start with the employer partners. So we have we're in conversations with hundreds of employer partners that are spread across the world. And the great thing about Facebook's what we call our big six media agencies, the likes of WPP, that maybe some of you have heard of, Havas, Omnicom, is that they have satellites in across the world, in Africa, countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America. So we're fortunate in that respect. And then we also are just opening an office in Nigeria that will have access to many clients across the continent. And of course, we have an office in South Africa. So I think that's the beauty, that our client ecosystem is so global. So hopefully we'll see even more businesses sign up to that. And of course, we have a partnership with Freelancer, which is a global freelancing platform. So wherever you are in the world, you can be part of that platform and get work and get paid for it.
And if I could just add to that, so this Facebook program we just launched, but we have other programs just like this for other job roles that have been going for multiple years. So when we talk about like what's worked and our placement rates and helping people get jobs, we do have a lot of that information. On the Facebook program, it was just launched, and so over the next 6 months, we'll really be, seeing how well this job role works. But I wanted to take a step back. Rather than looking at this as like developed countries and non-developed countries, or like US versus UK versus India, we really look at this at the community level. Learning happens locally and getting a job happens locally. And so what we've done is we go to different communities around the world, really starting with the US, and then we've expanded to a lot of developing countries where we work with that existing workforce development ecosystem. So we work with the local colleges and universities. We work with the local employers. We work with the local nonprofits and government. So many learners come through our program, just through learning about Coursera and doing it on their own. Many will be paired with a local nonprofit that knows how to reach, a specific group, maybe that didn't have as much experience in the educational system, or didn't have as much access to a lot of these tools. And so we see ourselves, like we said before, not really as a panacea, but just as one piece of an ecosystem that has worked in communities. And we're excited to speak with you guys because we think that there's the potential really to bring this to different communities around the world. And while different, this is one tool that can help amplify and empower the efforts that these communities are doing, are connecting, digital skills to learners to jobs.
Daryl, Nicole, could you share an example, because you both mentioned this in your comments? Do you already have an example of, a case where you may have partnered with the government or with an NGO particularly actually with the government on the public side, to see if it can also be incorporated in general TVET institutions, and so that was one. But I also want to take two other questions before I hand it back to you. There's a question from Shannon about what is the completion rate to date? Is this being run in cohorts, and how do you manage to connect students with each other? You both, I think, Daryl, it was you who mentioned the peer learning element of your program. So maybe you just could expand on that a little bit. And then a really interesting question that I was also thinking about actually is, do you have this course, do you offer it to small and medium enterprises as well? This is a question from Anupa. And do you help them convert from offline to online? Because one of the things we are also noticing is even among the smaller businesses, the micro enterprises and the small businesses, it's really becoming important for them to have a digital presence if they have to survive in this world. So is this access to individuals, or is this also accessible to enterprises? And then I'll let you respond before I go on to the next round of questions.
Shall I start with that one? I'll start with the small business question first. So this course is 100 hours long. And what we as Facebook have noticed when we support our clients is that most small businesses do not want a 100-hour course. They're trying to run their business at the same time. So we actually offer, Facebook itself offers lots of training to small businesses for particular issues that we know small businesses have on their platform. And we do it really as bite-sized content for particular challenges using advertising to market their businesses. So we take quite a different audience analysis for the small businesses, and we can come back and do another session on our whole small business framework, which is quite different to this job seeker audience. So that's what I'll say there.
We'll take you up on that.
Thank you.
Then and the completion rate, did you address that?
Daryl, do you want to talk through that?
Yes. So this program was just launched in September. I'll kind of combine it with the cohort question. The way this works is learners can start at any time, and then learners that have started within a 4-week period are essentially batched together as a cohort. So things like discussion forums, things such as like peer graded assignments, this will be with your cohort of learners that you're going this through. But what it does is when you start the course, it gives you these deadlines of, we call them flexible deadlines, on when we think that you should progress. So you can link it to your calendar and you can follow a set schedule. For learners that are moving through the content slower at any time, they could just readjust and enter kind of in the next cohort, and all their progression is saved. As for completion rates, as we alluded to, program just launched in September. It'll take about 5 months for the average learner to get through, 3 to 5 months. So we hope to report back, 6 months from now, where we can start sharing that data. We do have other similar programs by Google, Salesforce, IBM on the platform that teach to other roles, say like outside of social media marketing. And we do have completion rates on those that we do share publicly in some impact reports. But typically, a learner that starts the program, we see about, let's say, 60 to 80% finish the first course. And then on average, we see 20 to 25% of learners finish the entire program. But I will say, with the caveat, in that we do a lot of research on these learners, and learners will sometimes come in the program just to learn specific skills, and then they actually get the job or get the outcome they were looking for, and then they'll jump back out. And so that's the cool thing about these online learning experiences, is it's the opportunity for learners really to dip their toe in, see if this is for them, get what they want out of it. But if they want to go through the entire thing and then be linked to these employers, this hiring consortium, that opportunity is there for them.
I am getting nervous that there are so many questions coming in, and I'm not doing a good job, relaying them to you. Okay, so there's a question from Facebook Live saying, I think children should grow up being familiar with ICT. I don't know how such problems could be solved in developing countries like Ethiopia. I think you sort of addressed that. So there's another question which is asking you, who is paying for this program? Is it the students, the universities, the governments, or the companies? And I saw a related question from Shannon about, do you have any income sharing agreements in a way to make it affordable, in the sense you team up with your corporate partners who are going to hire these people? Do you have any sort of what's your business model, I guess, is the question.
Yep.
I'll stop
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Perfect. So how it works is anyone can log on our platform and start taking these courses, what's called in audit mode. So all of the lecture videos, practice projects, practice tests, a learner can take. If they actually want to be able to take the graded assignments where they get feedback and then earn the credential, and then also take the exam certification on Facebook, they have to pay. If they're an individual learner, they pay $49 a month in the US. In some developing markets, that's geo-priced to $29 a month. It takes learners on average, let's say 3 to 5 months. So you're talking about around $150, $200 to go through the program. For any learner that can't afford it, there is financial aid available that they can apply for, and then they can get accepted and have the full experience for free. I think we've had something like over 10,000 learners already apply for financial aid just since September and are taking the program for free. In addition to that, we have enterprises, which could be colleges, which could be companies, or could be governments, where they actually fund licenses, where they run like a workforce development or a digital marketing course, and they'll actually fund and put learners through this. Or Facebook has actually generously partnered with Coursera and bought a bunch of scholarships that they're distributing to different groups to distribute to the world. Anything I'm missing there, Nicole?
No, nailed it.
There's another really interesting question from Akshay. So we talked about outreach to youth and outreach and the inclusion aspect there, but his question is, how do you engage the employers? And how do you know they are happy with the curriculum that you've designed? How do you build that engagement on the corporate side? Yeah.
Sure, that's a great question. I think obviously being Facebook, we're a client first company. So we engage with these clients who become the employer partners all the time. So it's quite accessible to us. And I think, when we as Facebook, we need to hire lots of social media marketing manager roles, and so do our clients. We're all looking for diverse talent, right? And so that's really at the heart of why we wanted to create this program. Because in order to do amazing advertising campaigns, you need to understand different types of people, right? It's about creativity, psychology, all these kinds of things that make social media campaigns work. So I think just having honest conversations with our clients as to what kinds of skill sets and talent they're looking for. And then, as we designed the curriculum, we got feedback from various clients to make sure we were headed in the right direction. And of course, we haven't got there yet, but when we do get a graduate pool, we'll be obviously looking for feedback as to how this graduate pool found their onboarding process, etc.
And another question again from Akshay is, how do you do any work on helping the learners get jobs? I think you addressed that already, but also, do you have any insights on how one can increase retention? And also linked to that, I was also thinking that because your program is so specific on digital marketing, did you do, and maybe you covered this, but I may have missed this, did you do any sort of a demand assessment? Like, do you have an idea how many potential jobs are really out there, so that you're not oversupplying candidates? Do you have an assessment there?
Yeah. So I'll take that last question. And Daryl, do you want to take the other questions? On the last question, we obviously did lots of research on digital marketing roles and the specific skill sets needed in those roles. And so we've got a lot of that data from various sources, from obviously so many different labor market surveys, and then obviously speaking to our clients. And we also know, particularly from Facebook and our clients' perspective, what level that role goes in at in a particular company or business. So we're pretty clear on that. We're also really clear on what skill sets are not taught in the program, and so we know, sort of where we're not sort of meeting or facing the challenge of not meeting our clients' expectations. So we really are quite solid in that area.
Mm-hmm. And then there's another question from Quincy asking, do you have data to show positive outcomes with employer partners hiring cohorts once they have completed the 100-hour program? Or I guess this is too soon, right? I mean, this is too early in the day for you to tell. But I mean, we would be very interested also in keeping in touch with you and also understanding how it's rolling out and what are some insights that you're seeing. I mean, I understand this is so early in the day for you, but for example, one question which I'm surprised nobody has raised yet, but I know several of my colleagues might be thinking about it, is this whole agenda of gender, the inclusion of gender. We see typically women get left out of courses that involve anything to do with technology. And so I think a lot of my colleagues would be interested in seeing what insights you're gathering in terms of, are women enrolling? Are enough young girls enrolling in your program? Number one. Number two, are they dropping out even if they enroll? Because we see in a lot of our programs, specifically where we are designing a training program, but particularly where it's a digital training program, we see a lot of turnover and people, young women dropping out because they have childcare responsibilities and several other constraints. So we'd be interested in even looking at issues like who enrolls, do they drop out, do they complete, and if they have enrolled and completed, do they actually go ahead and get jobs? And then do they stay in those jobs? And particularly from a gender angle, that would be very interesting. But I don't know if you're going to track that kind of data.
Yeah, and just to provide some insight, we have a behavioral science team at Coursera. Imagine the amount of data we have on learners coming in and just every point of them going through a course. And because of our end count of number of learners is so large, even from different subgroups. So more granular than male versus female, but females from this region of the world. We're actually able to see them go through, and two things are happening. We have machine learning driven engagement tools. So such as if there's a certain persona that's getting stuck on one area, it'll do things like messaging intervention saying that, don't worry, like 60% of people actually fail this assessment on the first time. Things like that will get tested. And then when we see positive outcomes that actually works, then this will kind of scale across to any learner that fits that persona when they get to that point. In addition to that, we're able to analyze the data and actually make updates and changes in real time. Imagine in a classroom of 300 students, if one student misses something and starts to fall behind, in a standard lecture hall, no one knows that. There's no intervention or change that's made. For us, we're able to look at each learner individually and compare them not just across this program, but across all of our other learning programs, find outliers, find issues, and then remediate either automatically within the course or by flagging to us to bring in our teaching and learning team, bring in our subject matter experts, and make real changes.
I should say that for the data that we're seeing so far on enrollment trends, we have 45% of learners are identify as women. So it's almost a 50-50. And then 47% identify as being unemployed. So hopefully we're tackling that challenge as well.
That is super interesting. I particularly, the angle about using behavioral science and behavioral nudges, that you're not going to send that prompt, that text message to everybody, but only to certain types. We'd be so curious to learn more about some of what has gone into your model there. We have just 1 minute left, but I'm feeling greedy, and I want to just pull in, put in another question. And I really apologize in advance to those who've sent in questions and I haven't been able to get to them. But there's a quick question on, do you do any kind of self-assessment at the outset to see what kind of learner profile is going to be more successful or not? So do you have an intake process? And maybe a few seconds, Daryl and Nicole, if you can address that.
Daryl, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So the way the curriculum is built, that initial introduction is really like the narrative, like, hey, you even know what these exciting careers in digital marketing are and like what they could be. And then we start very early on having assessments based on the mastery learning approach, where you start with the most simplest things and you just stack on top, to where we help learners progress. So anyone can come in the program, no prerequisites required. But very quickly, it starts out very simply. It gives you like a strong introduction, but then as you go through and you master the different skills, the difficulty level obviously increases. And so this is our way of having learners start to try it and understand really if it's for them, and then to continue go deeper as they see it as a fit for themselves.
Thank you. We're almost out of time. A big thank you to you, Nicole and Daryl. And, talking about metrics, one of the metrics we use for the sessions that we organize is, did we run out of time in the end? That there were more questions than we had time to get to. So on that account, like full marks to the two of you. Were there emails later to us asking to be connected to you, the two of you, and to see if there was a potential, opportunity to collaborate? So I can already see some messages coming in. And third, maybe what we hope to do with these sessions is to encourage more collaboration and partnership. So let's spread the word out there that this is what you're doing, and maybe there's alignment in something else that another organization or one of our teams in the bank is doing. So we will be in touch with you. You'll be hearing from us. But just a big thank you to the two of you for sharing, early insights from your program. And thank you to all of you who joined. And I apologize again that we weren't able to get to all questions, but we can keep the conversation going even offline. So thank you. Thank you all.